This is Dead Male Tales. Let us know how we're doing by liking the video, subscribing to our channel, click the bell icon if you want to be notified when we find another letter. On with the story. My dearest Samantha, it's been a week since I've written to you. I wanted to write sooner, but I needed to wait until I knew I was safe. Empty words, talking about being okay, did not settle well with me. The point of me writing these is so you know I'm alive. Now that I'm officially out of harm's way for a while, I can rest and fill you in on what happened these past several days. As a note, this is written from the North Catamount Reservoir, just northwest of Colorado Springs. The national forest here is so beautiful and surrounded by monstrous mountains. I wish we'd come here on one of our road trips. It's picturesque, untouched by the unreal turn the world has taken recently. We'll visit together one day. I want you to hold me to that. The drive here took longer than I anticipated. I left the reserve that next morning as planned and waited until we were on the road to tag that sign with your bright yellow smiley face. It's just a bit down the road from where we stayed, so it'll be easy to find. The first leg of the trip went rather smoothly. It surprised me because every attempted short trip seems to come with problems. Flat tires, scientists, crazy people with guns chasing me in a mystery car. I think the universe is determined to get me to Seattle in one piece, but it's not going to make it easy. I was grateful to get a few hours of peaceful driving before I had to stop and prepare for nightfall. We stopped just past Amarillo, Texas. There was a temptation to stay in town and scavenge for any useful items, but we were well stocked. I was not about to risk a good day's drive. When driving through the city, there were infected everywhere. Daytime was kind to us. They lumbered along, almost like they were drifting, waiting for the sun to go down. Seeing them pushed me to find somewhere to stay outside of the city limits. I couldn't imagine the chaos of Amarillo after dark. There was a hotel on the outer rim. I didn't want to chance going too far, so we decided to check it out. I know I should still be sleeping in the van, but this area seemed relatively free of infected. I parked around the rear of the building to hide the van from the street entrance. I walked over to the rear service doors with Cash at my side. One of the doors was slightly propped open with a rock. From the look of it, it was the staff smoking area. We were able to walk right through the supply room and then out into the main corridor. It was quiet enough. There were a few rooms I questioned, so we didn't touch them. I chose a first floor room in case we needed a quick escape. However, I had to improvise an under-the-door tool to unlock the commercial electric lock and use an old key card for popping the sliding latch. After spending 20 minutes on the ground, cursing the world for ever making anything electric, I finally got that door open. I peeked out the window that night. Let's just say I was glad we were in that hotel. Creatures were sprinting down the street as they yowled and gurgled. If it were not so unsafe, I would have worn earplugs. Their instinct is to seek out the living, or I assume so, and I wasn't about to be their next target. No sign of that car, but I figured they'd be smart about going out past sunset. It was so comfortable in that room. We decided to stay another night. It was much better than the hotel I lived in for those few months when my parents evicted me from the rental property after finding out you were moving down there. The floor in that thing was more comfortable than the bed. Funny how this is the first time I've thought about my parents since all of this happened. I can still hear my old man saying those things about you, about me, about us. It was 2013 and they were still living in the 1950s. I just wrote them out of my life after that, but not before letting them both have it. If they've fallen victim to the infection, if they are now creatures that live to rip people apart, the whole bass-ackwards family, parents, brother, cousins, aunts, and uncles, they're probably kinder now. Imagine being more tolerable as an infected monster than as a human being. They truly were horrible people. Sorry for the tangent. Anyway, After those 2 days, we trudged on. Instead of taking I-40, we took Highway 87 until we got to Raton, New Mexico. We stayed there for another couple of nights, but this time I saw the car. They must know what I have, or at the very least, where I'm going. I quickly found another hotel, hid the van again, and took up a room on the 3rd floor. I could not stop looking out that window. The sun was still up, and I had another type of monster chasing after me. Nowhere felt safe. Later that day, they pulled their car into the parking lot. To say I was terrified is an understatement. This time, though, they got out of their car, and I was able to look at the 2 men hunting me down. One was a tall, broad-shouldered man with thinning hair. The other was a bit shorter. He had dark hair, a full beard, and a few tattoos. The 2 men talked to one another before walking towards the building. I was very fortunate that they didn't bother going around to the rear of the building, because if they found the van, I would have been in trouble. It seemed they were only staying the night. Though I never heard them on the floor we were staying, I tried not to make a sound. Cash seemed to understand the situation and kept quiet, sticking to his spot on the bed. He's so smart. When the car left the parking lot the next morning, I was finally able to take a proper breath. I didn't sleep much. I was too nervous. I kept thinking that the 2 men may get adventurous during the night and try to tour the place. We intended to leave that morning, but out of fear, I decided to wait another day to hit the road. A road trip to Seattle would have been done and over with by now, under normal circumstances. Who knew it would take me almost a week to travel 8 hours? Cash and I left the second morning, after the sun was entirely over the horizon. By that point, we were running low on canned food, and the rabbit meat was gone, something Cash whined about when I gave him pemmican for breakfast. I told him that we would be hunting soon and to be patient. He's my only companion at this point, so I've taken to having long conversations with him. He doesn't seem to mind. In fact, I think he really listens to me. His ears will perk up and he'll cock his head to one side. I took a few pillows, a comforter, and some towels before we left, but now it seems Cash has claimed them for himself. We took I-25 the rest of the way into Colorado Springs. It was a short drive to the city, so I had plenty of daylight left to hit a few abandoned stores to see what I could find. I'm reminded of that End of the World movie we watched last year, where everything had already been ransacked, but I've been getting fortunate with my searches. Instead of going deep into the city, I decided to stick to the outer edge. There were plenty of convenience stores and one chain grocery store, so Cash and I decided to check it out. The van ended up being more than just a carrier for auction items because we have storage for whatever we find. I took 2 of the pillowcases from Cash's stash and decided to use those for our excursion. I took the 9mm along for emergencies. First, we took to the convenience stores. It was easier to see inside and determine if it was safe to enter. We picked up a few canned goods, a couple of lighters, and even some candy. Bottled water and drinks were left in the cooler, so I took those too. Well, not all of them, because my conscience told me that it would be wrong to snatch everything when there could be somebody else in need. That was one pillowcase full. I dropped it off at the van and went back to the grocery store. All seemed quiet. Cash and I listened for noises through the doors and heard nothing. Since there was no electricity, I had to pry the doors open. I grabbed a grocery cart to keep the doors from closing again. It stood out, but I didn't want to box myself inside. We quietly made our way down the aisles. Surprisingly, there were a lot of groceries left despite the mess. It looked like people hastily grabbed their belongings, ran, took what they could, and left the rest. I managed to get canned potatoes and packets of onion soup, and even some canned fruit. Who knew that canned fruit and canned potatoes would turn my dinners into a 5-star delicacy? Then I heard a noise, like a clank and clatter coming from across the store. I thought maybe something was perched on the edge of a shelf and fell. Still, curiosity got the best of me, and I wish it hadn't. Cash and I wandered back towards the opposite end of the store towards the freezer section. Another sound came from that way, and I froze. I hadn't been down that far, and Cash was right beside me. If it was neither of us, then there was someone or something else lurking down there. I debated on running toward the front door, but then I saw a small group of infected slowly moving toward me, their mouths hanging open and letting out the most disgusting sounds. My stomach churned and I felt sick. Standing between two aisles, I took 2 steps back. As soon as I neared the end of the aisle, 2 more of those monsters stepped out. They were blocking my way. Looking back, I saw the other 3 at the other end of the aisle. I had been blocked in. Cash growled and stood right by my side. I didn't want to use the 9mm unless I absolutely had to, for fear of attracting more of those things. Looking around, I found my nearest weapon. The grilling aisle, full of charcoal, aluminum foil, and utensils, left me with plenty of options to fight back. I grabbed a large 2-pronged fork and didn't waste any time planning the object and its intended target. When I pulled the fork away, the infected fell to the floor in a heap. I did the same to its friend. Then I jumped over their bodies and sprinted towards the door. Instead of giving the others a chance to escape, I climbed over the grocery cart, waited for Cash to join me, and dislodged it. The door slowly slid shut, and I pushed them together for good measure. If I had a key, I would have locked it to prevent other innocent people from getting hurt. We ran back to the van. I could still feel my pulse in my ears after we loaded up the other pillowcase and pulled out of the parking lot. It took some time for my adrenaline to pass through and allow me to fully relax again. I-25 took us to Highway 24, and from there it was smooth sailing into the National Forest. The signs made it easy to get to the reservoir, but I knew its size would make it difficult to find me should those men still be on the hunt. Once I reached the lake, I picked out a comfortable spot, secluded amongst the trees. The van was completely hidden. There were no cabins or houses this time, but at least I have a place to sleep. Cash loves the water, and he played for a while this afternoon before the sun went down behind the trees. You would have loved to have seen him having such a good time. I also managed to do some shore fishing and get a few decent catches. Looks like shore fishing is what I'll have to do until I can get the crack in my boat repaired or find another one. I'm guessing it cracked during the run-ins with the mystery car. Traveling at such a high rate of speed, I'm surprised that I still have a boat. Tomorrow I'll hunt, and maybe find some time in the forest to see if I can manage some bigger game. Though, even being out in a rural area, you never know if one of those things is nearby. Cash is pretty good about giving me a heads up about these things. I just never want to become complacent. For the first time in a week, I feel safe enough to get a good night's sleep. I'm going to dream of you, as I hope you're dreaming of me. I'm not the same man I was 69 days ago. I've changed. However, one thing that will never change is my love for you. I miss you more each day I wake up. On my way to the next stop, I'll put this letter in the location I referenced in the last letter, except this time, you'll see a Nirvana smiley by our names. As always, look on the back for the map to my next stop. I'm getting closer. Just hang on a little longer. I love you. From the Wasteland, Dalton.